It's 3 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling. Your brain won't shut off. The car could break down tomorrow. The laptop could die. A pink slip could land on your desk. Sound familiar? There's a specific dollar amount that kills those panic spirals. It's not $1 million. It's not even 100,000. It's $10,000. And it changes absolutely everything. Most people think financial milestones are just arbitrary numbers designed to make you feel behind. But there's real psychology and real math behind why certain numbers shift your entire reality. The first real game changer? That first 5-figure balance sitting in your account. But first, let's be brutally honest about what life looks like without it. You're at the grocery store, mentally calculating if you can afford the name brand cereal. Or you're stuck with the generic version that tastes like compressed chalk. Your friends suggest dinner out. You quietly invent an excuse. Because a $25 meal would blow your entire weekly budget. That's not a personal failure. That's the reality of paycheck to paycheck. And it affects tens of millions of Americans right now. Zero savings means every financial decision becomes a high-stakes gamble. Every unexpected expense feels like a potential catastrophe heading straight for you. You're playing defense with your money 24/7, never offense. But here's where it gets really interesting. There's a psychological phenomenon that kicks in at exactly $10,000. And it has nothing to do with buying expensive things. Most people who hit this milestone don't change their spending at all. The transformation is far more subtle and far more powerful. The first thing that shifts is your entire relationship with risk. With zero savings, every single decision feels dangerous. A new job, a move to a different city, even planning a simple vacation. All of it becomes a source of crushing stress because one wrong move destroys you. But the moment you have $10,000, those same decisions feel completely manageable. You're not quitting your job to become a professional juggler, but you might finally ask for that promotion you've been sitting on for months. You might invest in a certification that boosts your earning potential permanently. The safety net doesn't make you reckless. It gives you permission to think beyond survival. And then there's the neuroscience. This is where it gets wild. Studies show financial security actually reduces cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone. $10,000 doesn't just change your finances, it changes your body chemistry. Think about the last time your check engine light came on. Living paycheck to paycheck, that little orange symbol is a countdown to financial ruin. You're immediately calculating credit card debt, family loans, and whether you can make rent. But with $10,000 saved, that same warning light becomes a minor annoyance. You're irritated, sure, but you're not panicking. That difference is massive. That shift from panic to mild inconvenience sounds small. It absolutely is not. When you're not consumed by financial anxiety, you make better decisions everywhere. You sleep better. You're more productive. You're more patient with everyone around you. Financial stress quietly contaminates every single area of human behavior. Removing it frees up enormous mental energy you can redirect toward improving your life. Here's something most people never realize about having $10,000. The majority of the benefit doesn't come from spending it, it comes from knowing it's there. Financial experts call this the emergency fund effect. It's wildly underrated. Most people who build $10,000 rarely spend it on emergencies. They spend it on opportunities, education, starting a business, relocating to a better market. Or they simply have the mental bandwidth to focus on growing their income, instead of white-knuckling basic survival every single day. There's also a confidence factor that's hard to quantify but impossible to ignore. When you know money is in the bank, you carry yourself completely differently. You negotiate better, you walk away from bad deals because you're not desperate. That confidence compounds. Better job offers, better relationships, better outcomes everywhere. It's a feedback loop that starts the moment you hit 5 figures. Now let's talk practical numbers, because the math here is genuinely encouraging. Most car emergencies cost between $500 and $3,000. With $10,000 in the bank, car trouble becomes a logistical problem, not a crisis. Medical emergencies, urgent care visits, trips, minor procedures, most of these fall within the same range for the average American. Your $10,000 cushion absorbs the blow completely. Even job loss, probably the scariest financial scenario most Americans face, becomes survivable. $10,000 buys you roughly 3 to 6 months of breathing room depending on your expenses. That's enough time to be selective about your next career move instead of desperately accepting the very first offer that appears on your screen out of pure financial panic. And beyond playing defense, $10,000 finally lets you play offense with your money. This is where the real wealth building magic starts to happen for most people. Say a certification program could boost your annual salary by $10,000 per year, but it costs $2,000 up front. Without savings, that's a complete non-starter. You can't even consider it. But with your financial foundation in place, it becomes an obvious investment with a clear 5-to-1 return. You spend $2,000 now and earn $10,000 more every single year going forward. Or imagine a friend is starting a company and looking for a small investor. Without savings, all you can do is wish them luck and watch from the sidelines as the opportunity passes you by. But with $10,000, you have the option to participate in something that could genuinely change your entire financial trajectory. You're no longer just a spectator, you're a player. Then there's the research on sleep, and yes, this is backed by actual peer-reviewed studies. People with emergency funds report significantly better sleep quality than those living without any financial cushion. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of insomnia in America, and eliminating it has immediate, tangible health benefits that most people completely underestimate until they experience it firsthand. Money stress is also consistently cited as one of the top drivers of relationship conflict and divorce in the United States. When you're constantly fighting about bills, it poisons everything else in the relationship. When you're not fighting about bills every week, you show up completely differently for the people who matter most to you. Your patience increases, your presence improves, and your relationships actually start to thrive. Now, here's a number that might shock you. The average American spends over $3,000 a year on coffee, dining out, and convenience purchases alone, and that's not even counting car payments or streaming subscriptions. Redirect just 1/3 of that spending towards savings, we're talking roughly $1,000 a year, and you'd hit $10,000 in under 3 years. That's it. That's the entire math. Nobody is saying give up coffee forever. That would be insane and completely unsustainable. But most people have far more flexibility in their budget than they've ever honestly acknowledged to themselves. The gap between someone who builds savings and someone who doesn't usually comes down to 2 things: awareness and intentionality. Not income, not luck. Just paying attention and making deliberate choices. Here's what truly separates people who reach this milestone from those who never do. And I promise you, it's not discipline, it's not willpower, it's not grinding yourself into dust. It's identity. Most people approach saving money like a crash diet. They cut everything drastically, grind for a few painful months, burn out completely, and then drift right back to their old spending habits. Sound familiar? But the people who successfully reach $10,000 don't treat saving as a temporary sacrifice or a punishment. They start thinking of themselves as someone who saves money. That identity shift changes every financial decision they make afterward. You start noticing expenses you never noticed before. You get creative about finding new income streams. You start thinking long-term instead of constantly chasing immediate gratification. And that mental shift is worth more than any single deposit. Most automotive emergencies cost between $500 and $3,000. With $10,000 in the bank, a car breakdown shifts from a financial crisis into nothing more than a logistical inconvenience you can handle without panic or debt. Medical emergencies, urgent care visits, trips, minor procedures typically fall well under $10,000 for most Americans. That savings buffer transforms a health scare from a financial disaster into something you can actually manage. Job loss is probably the scariest financial scenario most Americans face. But $10,000 in savings buys you 3 to 6 months of breathing room, enough time to find the right opportunity instead of desperately grabbing the first one. Without savings, job loss means accepting the very first offer that comes along, no matter how bad. With $10,000, you can afford to be selective. That selectivity alone could be worth tens of thousands in lifetime earnings. Here's where $10,000 stops being defensive and starts playing offense. A certification program that costs $2,000 upfront but adds $10,000 to your annual salary is an obvious investment, but only if you have the savings to make it possible. Without savings, a $2,000 certification that could transform your career is simply impossible. It's not even a decision you get to make. Financial constraint removes the option entirely before you ever have a chance to evaluate it. The same logic applies to small business investments. A friend launching a company and looking for a $2,000 investor could change your financial trajectory forever. Without savings, you watch from the sidelines. With savings, you get a seat at the table. Options are the most underrated form of wealth. When you have $10,000 saved, you have options. When you have zero savings, your only option is to survive the next 30 days. That gap in decision-making power is enormous. Studies show people with emergency funds report significantly better sleep quality than those without savings. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of insomnia in America, and $10,000 is essentially a prescription-free sleep aid. This isn't just feel-good advice, there's hard data behind it. Financial anxiety is a clinical phenomenon that disrupts sleep architecture, raises blood pressure, and accelerates chronic health conditions. $10,000 doesn't just help your bank account, it helps your body. Money stress is consistently cited as one of the top 3 causes of divorce and relationship conflict in America. When you're not fighting about bills every week, you show up differently, more present, more patient, more connected to the people you love. Financial stress doesn't stay in your bank account. It bleeds into everything: your relationships, your health, your work performance, your mood. Remove the stress, and every other area of your life quietly starts improving at the same time. Here's a number that should motivate you. The average American spends over $3,000 per year on coffee, dining out, and convenience purchases alone, not counting car payments, streaming subscriptions, or any major recurring expenses. Redirect just 1/3 of that $3,000 annual spending towards savings, and you'd have $10,000 in under 3 years. Nobody's telling you to give up coffee forever, but most people have far more room in their budget than they've ever realized. The gap between someone who builds savings and someone who doesn't almost never comes down to income. It comes down to awareness and intentionality. 2 people earning the same paycheck can end up with wildly different financial outcomes based purely on habit. You probably know someone who makes 6 figures but is always broke: expensive car, fancy apartment, $20 salads, and zero savings. And you might know someone earning $40,000 a year who has managed to build real financial security through intentional spending. The difference isn't income, it's mindset. And reaching $10,000 in savings is essentially a masterclass in developing the right financial mindset, one that distinguishes wants from needs and rewards patience over impulse. Decision fatigue is a real psychological phenomenon. Every day, the average person makes thousands of tiny financial micro-decisions. Each one burns mental energy, and by the end of the day, that cognitive exhaustion quietly degrades every other decision you make. Generic cereal or name brand? Pack a lunch or grab food? Premium gas or regular? Each of these micro-decisions seems trivial. But when you're living paycheck to paycheck, every single one of them is loaded with financial anxiety that drains your mental energy. When you have $10,000 in the bank, 90% of those daily financial micro-decisions simply disappear. You're no longer choosing based on what you can afford. You're choosing based on what you actually want. That mental freedom is worth more than most people realize. Someone shared a story about walking into a grocery store after hitting $10,000 in savings for the first time. They nearly cried, not because they went wild buying luxury items, but because they realized they could finally choose what they actually wanted to eat. That level of freedom, choosing based on preference instead of survival, is something most people don't even know they're missing until they experience it for the first time. It changes how you move through the world in ways that are hard to put into words. Having $10,000 saved doesn't make you rich. Let's be clear about that. It doesn't mean you can quit your job or stop budgeting. But it gives you something more valuable than luxury. It gives you breathing room. And breathing room is where good decisions are made. When you're not gasping for financial air, you can think strategically instead of reactively. You notice that your car insurance renewal is coming up and you actually have time to shop around for better rates instead of just accepting whatever they send you. You realize your phone plan costs way more than it should, and you actually have the mental bandwidth to switch providers and save $50 a month. Small optimizations like these compound dramatically over time and make your next financial goal even more achievable. Here's a counterintuitive truth about money psychology. When you have zero savings, every dollar feels precious, so precious that you're actually afraid to spend money even on things that could increase your earning potential. Scarcity thinking becomes a trap. But when you have $10,000 saved, individual dollars feel less precious in the best possible way. You become more willing to invest $50 in a networking event, $200 in a course, or $500 in a tool that could multiply your income dramatically. The person with no savings might skip a $50 networking event because $50 feels enormous when you're living paycheck to paycheck. But that same event could connect them with someone offering a job that pays $5,000 more per year. Scarcity is expensive. The safety net doesn't make you careless with money. It makes you more willing to invest in opportunities. And people who build their first substantial savings account frequently experience a sudden acceleration in their career growth as a direct result. Financial security gives people the confidence to take chances that broke people simply cannot afford to take. That's not a moral judgment, it's a structural reality. Options require capital, and $10,000 is the minimum viable capital for real options. There's also the social dimension of financial stress that personal finance articles rarely discuss. When you're constantly worried about money, it affects how you interact with other people in subtle but deeply significant ways that quietly isolate you over time. You avoid social situations because you can't afford to participate. You feel embarrassed about your financial struggles and become withdrawn. You might even develop quiet resentment toward friends who seem more financially stable, even though that resentment hurts only you. $10,000 in savings quietly dissolves many of those social barriers. You say yes to dinner. You attend the event. You show up fully present instead of distracted by financial anxiety. The social benefits of financial security are real and deeply underestimated. Now let's talk about identity, the most powerful and least discussed element of savings. Here's what separates people who reach $10,000 from those who never do. It isn't discipline. It isn't income. It's who they believe they are. Most people approach saving like a crash diet. They cut expenses aggressively for a few months, save hard, burn out completely, and slide back to their old spending habits. The cycle repeats forever, and the savings account never grows. The people who successfully reach $10,000 don't think of saving as a temporary sacrifice. They think of it as becoming a different type of person. They're not on a savings diet. They've changed their identity, and that changes everything downstream. When you see yourself as someone who saves money, you start noticing opportunities to reduce expenses that were invisible before. You become more creative about finding additional income sources. Long-term thinking replaces short-term impulse automatically, without willpower. The process gets easier as you go. Saving your first $1,000 is genuinely brutal. It demands real lifestyle changes and constant willpower. But your second thousand is noticeably easier because the habits are already forming. The muscle is being built. By the time you're working toward your fifth or $6,000, the saving process feels almost automatic. The habits are locked in. The identity is solid. You're no longer fighting yourself to save, you're simply living as a person who does. There's also a mathematical reality that makes $10,000 particularly powerful as a target. This specific amount covers the vast majority of unexpected expenses that derail people financially: car repairs, medical bills, job gaps, and family emergencies. Once you reach $10,000, you're effectively immune to most of the financial disasters that keep people stuck in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. Not all disasters, but most of them. And immunity from most disasters is a life-changing upgrade. But perhaps the most significant change that happens when you save your first $10,000 is how you start thinking about money itself. Instead of viewing money as something that disappears from your paycheck every month, you start seeing it as a tool. Before you have savings, money feels scarce and finite. Every dollar spent feels like a dollar gone forever. But when you have $10,000 working as your foundation, you start understanding that money can actually create more money. That's when everything shifts. This is where people start genuinely getting interested in investing, side hustles, and passive income, not because they suddenly became financial geniuses, but because they finally have the mental space to think beyond covering their basic monthly expenses. When you're not stressed about rent, you can start researching retirement accounts. When you're not anxious about grocery bills, you can start exploring stock market investments. Financial security creates mental bandwidth, and mental bandwidth creates wealth. Here's a statement that might genuinely surprise you. The person with $10,000 saved is actually closer to financial independence than someone with zero savings, even if that second person earns twice as much money. Read that again. Because the saver has mastered the single most important skill in wealth building. Not earning money keeping it. Earning gets you dollars. Keeping them is what builds actual wealth. And that skill is developed by saving your first $10,000. Reaching $10,000 teaches you to distinguish wants from needs. You become skilled at reducing expenses without feeling deprived. Most importantly, you develop patience to delay gratification, probably the single most valuable financial skill anyone can learn. The compound effect of hitting $10,000 goes far beyond immediate financial security. It changes how you think about risk. It changes how you approach opportunities. It changes how you plan for the future. And most importantly, it proves something to yourself. It proves to yourself that you are capable of achieving financial goals. That proof creates momentum for bigger accomplishments. Once you know you can save $10,000, your brain accepts that $20,000 is possible, then $50,000, then real financial independence. When you have your first $10,000 saved, you naturally start thinking about the next $10,000, and then the next. Before you know it, you're on a path toward real financial independence, not from luck or inheritance, but from developed habits and identity. The transformation of saving your first $10,000 isn't just about the money itself. It's about becoming the type of person who has money saved. And that identity shift creates ripple effects into every corner of your life in ways you never expected. $10,000 isn't just a number in a bank account. It's a complete psychological transformation. It's sleeping through the night. It's walking into job interviews with confidence instead of desperation. It's saying yes when opportunities show up instead of watching them pass. This milestone creates a domino effect most people never see coming. One small, consistent savings habit knocks over barrier after barrier: anxiety, missed opportunities, poor negotiations, damaged relationships, until an entirely different life is standing in their place. If you're currently staring at a bank balance that looks more like a phone number from 1955, don't panic. The goal isn't to save $10,000 overnight. The goal is to start the habit even with $25 or $50 per month and let consistency do the work. The most successful savers started with ridiculously small amounts, $50 a month, sometimes even $25. The key was never the size of the initial contribution, it was the consistency, showing up every month, no matter what. That's the entire secret. Once you build the habit of saving something every month, you can gradually increase the amount as your income grows or as you find ways to reduce expenses. The habit comes first, the amount follows. This is how $25 per month eventually becomes $500. And once you build the identity of being a saver, that identity sticks. You don't need willpower to maintain it anymore. It becomes who you are. You make different choices automatically, not because you're disciplined, but because it's just what you do. Start small, stay consistent, and never underestimate the compound power of a single good financial habit repeated for months and years. $25 a month sounds like nothing, but $25 a month for 10 years, with any growth at all, becomes something real. The person you become while saving your first $10,000 is infinitely more valuable than the money itself. The habits, the mindset, the identity, the confidence, the decision-making skills, those travel with you forever. The $10,000 is just the proof that they worked. Let's put this in real terms. Saving $10,000 at just $275 per month takes about 3 years. That's less than the cost of one unused gym membership, 2 streaming services, and a daily $5 coffee habit combined. The math is already in your favor. The biggest lie people tell themselves is that they'll start saving when they earn more. But study after study shows that lifestyle inflation consumes every raise before it can be saved. The best time to build the savings habit is now, at whatever income you have. Lifestyle inflation is the invisible enemy of savings. Every time your income goes up, your expectations quietly rise to match it. New car, nicer apartment, better restaurants, and suddenly the raise that was going to fund your savings disappears completely. The antidote is simple, but requires intentionality. Every time you get a raise, save at least half of it before lifestyle inflation can claim it. This single habit applied consistently over a career is how ordinary income earners build extraordinary savings. Automate the savings before you can spend it. Set up automatic transfers on payday so the money moves to savings before your brain even registers it as available. What you never see in your checking account, you never miss. This is the single most effective savings hack. Put your emergency fund in a high-yield savings account, not a standard bank account. In 2024, high-yield savings accounts were paying 4% to 5% APY. That means your $10,000 earns $400 to $500 per year in interest just for sitting there. A high-yield savings account earning 4.5% on $10,000 generates roughly $450 per year in passive interest. That's money that didn't require you to work a single extra hour. It's a small number, but it's the beginning of understanding how money makes money. Once you hit $10,000, a natural question emerges. Should you keep all of it in savings or start investing? The general advice is to keep 3 to 6 months of expenses as liquid emergency savings and invest anything above that threshold. The emergency fund stays liquid and accessible, that's its entire job. But any savings above your 3 to 6 month buffer can be put to work in index funds, retirement accounts, or other investments that outpace inflation over the long term. This is how $10,000 becomes the launchpad for real wealth building. The emergency fund removes the financial fear that keeps people from investing. With your safety net secured, you can take the calculated risks that generate long-term returns. People with emergency funds are statistically more likely to invest in the stock market than those without savings. Not because they're richer, but because having a financial cushion removes the fear of losing money that keeps so many people on the sidelines. And here's the brutal math that should motivate anyone who's been putting off building savings. If you had invested just $10,000 in an S&P 500 index fund 20 years ago and never added another dollar, it would be worth roughly $67,000 today. The market returns roughly 10% annually on average over the long term. At that rate, $10,000 doubles approximately every 7 years. The longer you wait to start, the more of that compounding engine you're leaving on the table permanently. But here's the thing. You can't invest what you haven't saved. You can't take calculated risks from a position of zero. You can't build compound wealth without capital to compound. $10,000 isn't the destination. It's the launchpad, and every journey needs one. So let's bring this full circle. You started this video lying awake at 3 a.m., cycling through financial disasters, car breakdown, job loss, medical emergency. Every one of those scenarios becomes manageable, not impossible, manageable with $10,000 saved. The 3 a.m. panic doesn't come from the actual probability of disaster. It comes from feeling unprepared. $10,000 doesn't eliminate bad luck from your life. But it does eliminate the helplessness, and helplessness is what makes financial stress unbearable. Financial security at the $10,000 level isn't about being wealthy. It's about being prepared. Prepared people make better decisions. They negotiate better. They sleep better. They show up better in every role: parent, employee, partner, entrepreneur. Preparation is power. Here's your action plan. Step 1. Open a dedicated high-yield savings account today, separate from your checking so you're not tempted to spend it. Out of sight, out of mind, but always available when you need it. Step 2. Automate your savings on payday. Even $50